Hey guys, how's everybody doing today? Today's video, I'm going to be doing my top 10 albums of 2017. It's going to be 10 albums plus 2 that just barely missed the list, so 12 albums in total. And this is my second attempt at doing this today. The first attempt, I had some great little sound clips to give you guys a feel for, some of these albums that may be less familiar artists. I think all these artists are known, but some of them may be a little bit less familiar. So I selected these little sound clips of various songs just to give you a taste of what they each sound like. But the copyright gods, I guess, we're not in agreement, so it kept blocking my video, so I'll have to do this video without sound clips, and I'll try as best as I can to describe these albums to you and maybe ask you guys to go over to YouTube to play some clips just to get a sense of what some of these albums sound like, okay? So 12 albums. There is a theme that I found in several of these albums on this list, is that several of these bands are bands that actually have reunited. They had been broken up for a while. Either a temporary breakup or it was supposed to be a permanent breakup, but for whatever reason the band got back together and made a great album. Obviously as a result of me putting it on the list, I certainly liked many of these albums, and I'll talk a little bit about the band's history and so forth, but focus mainly on the album at hand. So 2 albums, like I said, that just barely missed the top 10. The first in the number 12 spot goes to this band, the Clientele, and the name of this album is Music for the Age of Miracles. So the Clientele is an English band. I guess I would describe their sound as psych pop kind of sound with a lot of reverb on the vocals, very soothing kind of guitars. It's a 3-piece English band that were mainly popular back, I would say in the early 2000s. They had several albums back then. Strange Geometry, Violet Hour were a couple of the albums. I've seen this band live several times, and once actually I saw them in Toronto, and opening for them at the time was the band Beach House. So Beach House has gone on to be quite a bit more popular than the Clientele, but that was a really great concert. And the band that used to be a 3-piece, then they added a female keyboard player for 1 or 2 albums there, broke up, and now have regrouped as the original 3-piece. So again, highly recommended if you like your English psych. Someone described these guys one time as a cross between the Zombies and Donovan. That's an interesting comparison, but I suggest you go over to YouTube, listen to songs from this album. One song in particular, Lunar Days. Again, heavy reverb on the vocals, very nice guitar, sort of soothing kind of guitar. There is some Beatles influence, I would say, as well, that this band has. So my number 12 is the Clientele and Music for the Age of Miracles. Yeah, Music for the Age of Miracles. The next album, barely missing out the top 10, number 11, comes from US band Foxygen, and this is their album Hang. This album was released back in January of this year. Foxygen is primarily a duo of lead vocalist Sam France and multi-instrumentalist, mainly on keyboards, Jonathan Radu. Or Rado, I keep saying Radu. Jonathan Rado. So Sam and Jonathan, I guess their sound has been mainly described as, it's a mix of a lot of different 70s influences. Sam's vocals have been described before as having sort of a Mick Jagger kind of quality to them. Maybe so, not so much on this album, I think more on some of their other material. One album of theirs previous to this album that was pretty popular was We Are the Ambassadors of the 21st Century Peace and Magic, I think is the full title. Is an album that has sort of a pyramid cover with an eye at the top. That's probably my favorite album of theirs. This is a great album, and the song that I'd recommend you taking a listen to on YouTube for this album is the song Follow the Leader. So it's Foxygen at number 11. Now into the top 10. For those of you that have seen my past videos, you know that I'm an Oasis fan, and also followed Oasis after their breakup into the band Beady Eye without Noel Gallagher. And coming in 2017 came the debut solo album for Liam Gallagher and his album As You Were. So this is what you would typically expect, I guess, a Liam Gallagher solo album to be like. Very Beady Eye Oasis sounding with Liam's trademark vocals. He received a lot of help co-writing this album, and the writing is strong, and I think the songs are strong. It's not as strong as the first two Oasis albums. I don't think anything beats those two albums. Definitely Maybe and Morning Glory, and I don't think it's as good as the first Beady Eye album, but this is a strong debut solo recording for Liam Gallagher. I recommend listening to the songs Wall of Glass and Chinatown. This is a decent album for Liam, one that I would recommend to Oasis fans, and it's certainly better, in my opinion, than Noel's album that he just recently put out. I've listened to some clips from that. I'm not too impressed by that. I've always been more of a Liam fan than a Noel fan, even though I acknowledge that Noel was the songwriter for those classic Oasis tunes, and he continues to write, I think, strong songs. It's just I think Noel's songs really needs Liam's vocals behind them to make them great. So Liam Gallagher, number 10, As You Were. Number 9 comes from US band The Flaming Lips. And this is their album Ozzy Melody, I think is how you say it. This album is typical Flaming Lips, I think. It's very similar in sound to many of their more recent albums. I compare it a lot to Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots, although that is probably one of my favorite Flaming Lips albums. This album is similar in sound but not as good. It's not as strong as the Soft Bulletin, but I think it's still, if you like your Flaming Lips and your sort of keyboard heavy psych music, this is a great album to put on because it really sets the mood for the entire length of the album, and I think it's a strong album for these guys. Ozzy Melody, number 9. The number 8 album, I don't have the vinyl for, but I have the CD. It's for Roger Waters, Is This the Life We Really Want? I guess sort of a bit of a wall motif to this. This is only Roger Waters. I believe it's his official 4th studio album and first since I believe the early 90s. But this is a fantastic album. This is heavily Pink Floyd influenced, with maybe a little bit less guitars than Pink Floyd had. But certainly the sound of the album and the lyrics, very, very strong lyrics, very political lyrics. Some songs like Deja Vu and The Last Refugee, amazing songs. Hold on, just need to pause for a second. Sorry about that. So as I was saying, Roger Waters, yeah, this is a great album. I've heard him, I think he's taken these songs and he's really effectively weaved them into his set list, which has a lot of classic Pink Floyd songs. I've always been more of a Roger Waters guy than a David Gilmour guy. Like I said, the lyrics on here are amazing, and the album, when you hear it, you feel like, in a way, almost like you're listening to Pink Floyd, but less guitars. Highly recommend this. I may still yet get this on vinyl. The only reason I didn't get it is because the vinyl was a little bit costly, which I find Roger Waters, some of his albums can be. But this, it's certainly not a reflection of the music. This is an awesome album. So my number 8 for this year. Number 7 is the debut album for the Prophets of Rage. So this album, I showed it in a previous video when I got it, features three of the former members of Rage Against the Machine, Tom Morello, Tim Comerford, and Brad Wilk. And then taking over from Zach De La Rocha on vocal duties, you have Be Real from Cypress Hill and Chuck D from Public Enemy. This is a fantastic album. I mean, it sounds exactly as what you would expect. It sounds like Rage Against the Machine being fronted by Cypress Hill and Public Enemy. The album was billed by Tom Morello as the soundtrack for the Resistance. So as you can imagine, very political lyrics, very much anti-Trump type of sentiment on this, and I highly recommend this to fans of any of those bands that I mentioned before: Rage, Public Enemy, or Cypress Hill. Great album at number 7. Number 6 is by a jazz artist who I consider to be probably my favorite current jazz artist. I like a lot of jazz back from the 50s and 60s and 70s, but this jazz artist is probably been my current favorite in terms of modern day jazz, and it's Kamasi Washington and his album Harmony of Difference. This was marketed as an EP, but in terms of the length, which I believe is close to 30 minutes, it's maybe short by today's standards, but by 50s and 60s jazz album standards, it's pretty much in line with that. That's why I'm considering it as an album. Harmony of Difference has 6 songs, 5 songs on side 1, and 1 long track called Truth on side 2. Kamasi Washington, I think many of you may know him from his previous album. This cover may be familiar to most of you. His previous album was called The Epic, and very fitting of the name, as this is a triple CD set, and I believe the vinyl was maybe even 4 or 5 LPs in length. This is a fantastic album, but really hard to digest in one sitting. Harmony of Difference, on the other hand, as I said, 6 songs, maybe about 30 minutes in length. The highlight of this album really is the song on side 2 called Truth, which is 1 song for the entire side. I would say this music is primarily rooted in bebop, but there are also some fusion elements, some Latin elements, and it's a very spiritual kind of music. There's some vocals on here without lyrics, where there's just some vocal melodies, and it gives you a very spiritual feel. Sometimes it reminds me a little bit, not that it sounds like Coltrane, but I think some of Coltrane's more spiritual stuff, I start thinking of that when I'm listening to this album. And I think this is an album that can be appreciated by jazz fans and also non-jazz fans. I think it's that digestible that you don't necessarily have to be a jazz fan to get into this stuff. So I recommend you going and listening to the song Truth, which is a 14-minute plus song for the album Harmony of Difference, which is my number 6 album of the year. My number 5 is the joint album by Kurt Vile and Courtney Barnett. Both 2 of my favorite singer-songwriters, current singer-songwriters, both of them. I love the lyrics that these guys penned for their solo albums and on this album. And Kurt Vile is one hell of a guitar player as well. Great picking either acoustic or electric. I recommend you go listen to, this album's called Lot of Sea Lice. A Lot of Sea Lice. And I recommend you go listen to the tracks. Continental Breakfast is probably the one that I mostly recommend. This is a great album. It's just Kurt Vile's very, laid back, lazy drawl with his vocals, kind of almost slacker-like. But the lyrics on here are amazing, and the harmonies as well as the guitar playing. So my number 5 album, Lot of Sea Lice by Kurt Vile and Courtney Barnett. Number 4 by one of my current favorite bands. You've seen me show these guys plenty of times before. The latest album by Primus, The Desaturating 7. Again, this is a concept album about goblins who... It's about a children's book. It was taken from a children's book about goblins who go around the countryside stealing the color from rainbows. And Les Claypool, I mean, I've said this before, he is probably my favorite bass player of all time. And the band sounds great on this. This is the original Primus lineup with Les, Larry Lalonde, and Tim Herb Alexander on drums. There's some elements to this that sound like 1980s King Crimson, especially from the Discipline era, which is a good thing. I would recommend you listening to the song The Seven. There's an instrumental passage in that song that just really reminds me of 80s King Crimson. So number 4, Primus, The Desaturating 7. Number 3, and back to our theme of bands reforming and putting out some amazing albums. Reunions don't always work out. In fact, most times I don't think they do work out. But here are 3 examples coming up where I think they worked out and worked out extremely well. Number 3 is the Dream Syndicate. How Did I Find Myself Here? This is an album. This band was mainly around back in the 80s. They're from California. They were associated with that Paisley underground scene and neo-psychedelic scene back in the 80s. Have some weaving guitars with some nice guitar build-ups. There's also a Velvet Underground influence to some of this stuff on here. I'd recommend you listening to the title track, which is a 10-minute plus track that really gives you a good example of how those guitars weave and mesh together to do a nice sort of build-up. Yeah, I can't hardly recommend this enough. This is a fantastic album. Number 3, Great Return by the Dream Syndicate. And number 2, another band reuniting. The only reason they're very similar to the Dream Syndicate, I think, but I think they're a little bit less intense and a little bit more mellow with their dueling guitars. It's the band Luna and their album A Sentimental Education. This is an all covers album. Luna, of course, was formed from the ashes of the Galaxy 500. Dean Warnham then formed Luna, and they were popular mainly back in the 90s. They broke up, then reformed for a Spanish tour, and that Spanish tour led to a North American tour and subsequently to this album. As I said, an album of all covers. It covers songs by Bowie, by The Cure, by Mercury Rev, by Fleetwood Mac. The interesting thing is that the songs that Luna covers by those bands are lesser known songs by those bands, which really help because Luna really make these songs their own. And sometimes when you listen to covers, you feel like the covers may be too close and you can't get the original out of your head. I think because these songs, even though they're by some well-known artists, they're lesser known songs, and that really helps establish these songs as Luna songs. So Sentimental Education at number 2. And coming in at number 1, and it really, there was no competition for the number 1. This is easily my number 1 album of the year. Again, another band reuniting. It's Slow Dive and their self-titled album. Slow Dive, as I've shown before, is a shoegaze band back from the early 90s. They made 3 albums and had some EPs. Then they broke up and formed slowcore alt country band Mojave 3. They were my favorite band for a while back in the 90s. And then Slow Dive was given some offers to tour. They toured, and that led to the band members enjoying their company again, and they formed this album. Again, very dreamy kind of guitars, Male, female vocals, very dreamy, kind of buried in the mix. You know, they're probably one of the greatest examples of what shoegaze is all about, and shoegaze done in the right way. So easily my #1 album of the year. We have the Slow Dive self-titled album. So that's it. So thanks a lot, guys. I think this video would have been better with the sound clips, but unfortunately that was not meant to be. But I thank you all for watching, and I'd appreciate any comments. Thanks a lot.